I'd like to share with you the principles of soil health as it applies to my home landscape. So let's get started. Here we are. So this is a picture of the soil food web. I want to share with you what is in healthy soil, and then I'll share with you the benefits of healthy soil, why we should want healthy soil, and then how to make healthy soil. After we do that, I'm going to show you some pictures, very recent pictures from my home landscape that help illustrate the things that we do on top of the ground in order to build good soil underground. And that will include armor the soil, living roots, and diversity. Every one of these pictures has the same thing. So this is a picture of my purple coneflower with some blue vervain in there. There is some common violets with some purple coneflower. Here's my front yard, a portion of my front yard, my backyard, another portion of my backyard, another portion of my backyard that I just planted yesterday, and I'll tell you why I did it this way. And much of my why revolves around making healthy soil, and here's how you do that. And so let's go back up to the top. And let's say, okay, here we go. The soil food web. So the thing is, what is in healthy soil? The list to the right says, well, here's some of what's in healthy soil: the roots, the organic matter, the bacteria, the fungi, protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods, arthropods, and birds and mammals are in and around healthy soil. Let's look and see what is in this graphic. Now, this graphic is from the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, and here's what they have to say about, here's some of the stuff that's in the soil food web. So this is a graphic illustrating the flow of energy. Each one of these arrows is the flow of energy. So we have the flow of energy from plants to nematodes to arthropods to more arthropods and to birds. Down here we have the flow of energy from organic matter to fungi and bacteria to protozoa to nematodes and animals. So these are all the components of the soil food web. On the upper left, we have the sun, because all energy on Earth comes from the sun, and then the sun shines on the plants, and they do something called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process whereby plants take sunlight and water and carbon dioxide, and they turn it into sugars and oxygen. So the plants do all of that in the green part. And then underground, you have the roots. The roots, all of this process becomes organic matter. Organic means once living. In this context, organic means something that was once living. And then among those roots and within that organic matter, we have things like bacteria. The first part of the soil food web is bacteria. The plants take that energy from the sunlight and the carbon dioxide and the water, and they make sugars. And those sugars, they exude about a third of those sugars out of their roots. It varies with the plant, but about a third of those comes out through the roots. The sugars make the bacteria come running. The bacteria make the fungi come running because they're feeding off, the bacteria and the fungi are feeding off of each other. And then you have the nematodes getting into the action. Nematodes are microscopic worms. And notice that in this graphic, you have nematodes here, you have nematodes here, and you have nematodes here. Lots of different kinds of nematodes in the soil. And you have the fungi. Now, every one of these arrows represents a flow of energy. So you have bacteria eating the organic matter. You have the protozoa eating the bacteria. You have the nematodes eating the protozoa, because when energy is flowing in one direction, that means this thing is eating this other thing, going the opposite direction of the arrow. So you have the fungi here that are feeding largely on the plants and on the organic matter and on the bacteria. And so this is the soil food web. The purpose of this is to show you something that, wow, wouldn't it be great if we appreciated what's in the soil so we can say, so we can practice the principles of soil health, so we can respect what is in the soil, because this soil food web is the only thing that delivers nutrients to the plants. At least it's by far the best thing to deliver nutrients to the plant. And the soil food web is the only thing that can deliver all of the nutrients. There's so many nutrients. And so let's go on. The next slide is the benefits of healthy soil. This is the why. This is why we want healthy soil, because healthy soil can prevent flooding. Healthy soil prevents drought. Healthy soil prevents erosion, and healthy soil delivers nutrients to the plants, making them nutritious, resilient, and resistant to pests and pathogens. So that's what we were talking about here on the soil food web. This soil food web delivers all these nutrients, all of these animals that are eating each other, they're eating and excreting and eating and excreting and being eaten. That is what delivers nutrients to the plant. And when you deliver nutrients to the plant, then you generate organic matter. That organic matter becomes a framework in the soil on which all of this transaction of business takes place. When you have that framework, then the soil gets structure. Soil that has good structures, kind of think of a sponge. That sponge is light, and then it has a lot of water in it, and then it's heavy, but that sponge has structure, and that structure is the kind of the framework or the physical structure on which all of this transaction of business takes place. And as a result of that, that soil absorbs water. When the soil absorbs water, it prevents flooding. And when the soil absorbs water, it prevents drought, because in between precipitation events, that soil is holding on to the water, and the plants, the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, the nematodes, all get their water from this soil that has enough structure to it to be able to absorb water and hold on to it in between rain events. So these are some of the benefits of healthy soil. Now, we've done the what's in healthy soil. We've talked about the benefits of healthy soil, or why we should want healthy soil. And next is how to make healthy soil. Now, we'll be talking about this more when we talk about here's what's in my home landscape. But how to make healthy soil, 5 principles. These principles of soil health are from Gabe Brown. Let me click out of this and talk about Gabe Brown a little bit. So Gabe Brown is a North Dakota farmer who, he'll tell you he didn't invent the principles of soil health, but he is one of the people, including Jerry Brunetti and Ray Archuleta, who have articulated the principles of soil health. This is how nature works. Gabe Brown, Ray Archuleta will tell you that if you want healthy soil, what you want to do is to mimic nature. And here is how nature makes healthy soil. So let's talk about how nature makes healthy soil, and we should also want to make healthy soil as farmers, as regenerative landscapers, as organic and regenerative gardeners, as citizens, as park stewards. This is how we can have healthy soil. And it is 5 principles. Number 1, limit disturbance. So that means limit physical disturbance and limit chemical disturbance. Physical disturbance mainly means tillage. We want to limit tillage. And we want to limit chemical disturbance, meaning I'm not telling you what to do, I can't tell you what to do, but I choose to have no chemical fertilizers in my home landscape. And I choose to have no toxic pesticides in my home landscape. So principle of soil health, number one, limit disturbance. Number two, armor the soil. I will be telling you how, I'll be showing you how I armor the soil, which is in this picture here. You can see wood chips that cover up what would otherwise be bare dirt. So principle of soil health number two, armor the soil. Principle of soil health number three, build diversity. I will show you in my home landscape how and why I build diversity. I want a diversity of plant roots above the ground so that I can have the optimal diversity of soil organisms under the ground. And those soil organisms include worms, snails, slugs, microarthropods, and macroarthropods, which is your beetles and pill bugs and centipedes and millipedes, etc. So that's principle number three, is build diversity. Number four, living roots in the ground. If you're a farmer, you want to have cover crops. And cover crops are when you decide to have living roots in the ground as opposed to no living roots in the ground. Letting the ground lie fallow is a no-no if you want to practice the principles of soil health as set forth by Gabe Brown. Number five principle of soil health is integrate animals. Now, if you're a farmer and you have livestock, you can integrate animals by letting the cattle and the sheep graze on the ground before planting or after harvest. If you're a home gardener, you integrate animals by getting compost that's made from animal manure. You want to get manure that is from animals that have not been given antibiotics or dewormers, because that tends to limit the soil biology and it defeats the purpose. Now, if you don't have livestock, and even if you don't have manure, then you can integrate animals by allowing animals like worms and bugs to be in your soil. Whereas if you till the soil, then that kills the worms, for example. Here's where it eliminates their tunnels. It eliminates the habitat that insects and worms and snails and slugs and centipedes and pill bugs and millipedes and beetles would otherwise have in that ground. So the principles of soil health: limit disturbance, armor the soil surface, build diversity, keep living roots in the ground, and integrate animals. Now, let me show you how I've done this in my home landscape. I've got several pictures here. Every single picture says three of the five principles of soil health: armor, living roots, and diversity. So this is a picture I took yesterday of a planting I did day before yesterday. This is purple coneflower and blue vervain. And so you have some diversity here. And I could have separated the purple coneflower from the blue vervain. I chose not to because I want diversity above ground so we can have diversity below ground. Next, same thing. Here's a transplanting I did just yesterday or the day before, and it has common violets and purple coneflower. I've got a little bit of diversity there. Now, there's a little bit of crowding. It may be that I left this alone, that only one or the other would survive. But what is more likely, based on my experience, is that both of these will survive. The common violets and the purple coneflower will survive because I've seen it happen, and the benefit of that is that it's diversity. So in this one picture, I have armoring the soil. That's the wood chips. No bare ground. You can use leaves if you want to, but no bare ground. Living roots in the soil and diversity. Next picture. This is my front yard, and this is my third growing season in this front yard. The first thing I did was I started with grass, And I mean, it already had some grass. I brought in a bunch of wood chips, put them down about 6 inches of wood chips right here. So it's had a couple of years to mature. And we're talking as of May 9th, 2024. Let me give you a little tour of the front, but I hope you'll find that there's some diversity here. So we've got, this is common milkweed. This is purple coneflowers here. There's some purple coneflower over here. We've got some, there's some lance-leafed coreopsis here. This yellow flower is a lance-leafed coreopsis. Got lots of violets right here, violets over here, violets over here. Violets make great ground cover, and that's an example. You know, when you have ground cover, that's an example of armoring the soil, and it's also an example of living roots in the ground. So over here we have, that's some ironweed. Over here we have some evening primrose. On the fence we have some coral honeysuckle, and there's some yellow crownbeard here, and there's some cup plant is here and here and here. So I think you get the point. I've got some asters over here, some asters, here's some more yellow crownbeard, and intermingled in all this is some Virginia creeper. There's a tendency to want to just pull up something that's not your main thing, but that would eliminate diversity, that would reduce the diversity. Another thing I'll be telling you about this front yard is that over here is just a little 2-foot by 2-foot place behind this common milkweed, where I have been taking and transplanting some things. And in that process, I have respected the diversity. I've left some of the living roots there, but I have also been planting, you know, this diversity comes from that other place. So let's move on. Here's another example, same front yard. Here is, you know, most of the dark green here is common violets. The light green is New England aster. And then this succulent looking thing is rattlesnake master. Over here you have some purple coneflower, and there's a common, a strawberry, a wild strawberry. And so there we have it. There's diversity. Diversity, armor, and living roots. And the next, this is my backyard, got armor, living roots, and diversity. So armor, living roots, and diversity builds soil health. And this is a pathway made of wood chips, and it's armoring the soil. It's more functional from the standpoint of nature. It's more functionally integrated into my landscape to make pathways out of wood chips rather than concrete or aggregate or stepping stones or you know, river rock, that kind of thing. On the right and on the left, you have lots of common violets. You have here's oak, here's pokeweed. This is called small flowered leaf cup. And so there's lots of armor on the soil, lots of living roots in the ground, and lots of diversity. Armor, living roots, and diversity. Next picture, here's an example of armor, living roots, and diversity. This is a small portion of my backyard, and it's like, these are wild cherry trees, wild cherry tree seedlings. Now, my instinct is to say, these are weeds, I want to pull them up. But why would I pull them up? For one thing, wild cherry is great food for caterpillars, and caterpillars are an important part of the food chain. For another thing, this is living roots in the ground, and this is diversity. And there's not a whole lot of diversity right here, but there's more diversity there than there would be if I pulled it up. If I pulled it up, I would be lowering the diversity. I would be limiting the diversity. And another thing about this slide is that here's some Virginia creeper back here. Here's some violets on the left. So you have armor, you have living roots, and you have diversity. Here's a planting I did yesterday, and you can't see it very well here, but I'm going to draw a line. This is one row. And you see, here's a stick that's acting as a stake in the ground. There's about a dozen plants in this row, or a dozen plantings, a dozen places where I dug a hole and put something. There's about a dozen more in this row. There's going to be lots of diversity here. There's going to be, yellow crownbeard. There's going to be purple coneflowers. There's going to be black-eyed Susans. There's going to be bee balm, and there's some jewelweed in there. So lots of diversity. And of course, the first thing I did was I wanted to armor the soil by putting down about 6 inches of wood chips. Another thing the wood chips do is they attract fungi, because fungi serves the purpose of decomposing wood. When fungi sees wood, it says, hey, there's my dinner. So it gets in there and populates the fungi. Fungi is an extremely important part of natural ecosystems, and it's an extremely important part of the soil food web. And fungi tends to indicate that you have a mature ecosystem. A mature ecosystem tends to be impervious to invaders, including weeds. So you want fungi. Here's another planting I did yesterday, or no, I did this a couple weeks ago. But you have white crownbeard. You have, this is some kind of grass. I think it might be blue stem. Also within this blue stem, you have some Illinois bundleflower. You have purple coneflower, yellow crownbeard, and there's some evening primrose back here and some evening primrose there. So anyway, there you have it. Going for diversity and diversity, living roots, etc. And the purpose of it has multiple purposes, multiple benefits. But this is an example of how one home landscape can do its part to prevent flooding, to prevent drought, to provide wildlife habitat, to capture rainfall, and capturing rainfall and making that water, causing that water to be infused into our ecosystems is an extremely important part of addressing climate change, both in preventing too much climate change and also dealing with the effects of climate change. Because, the landscape I showed you is not typical, but what is typical is very degraded. What is a typical home landscape is one that does not have very much life in it. It does not have very many plants in it. It does not have very much of a diversity of plants to feed into the food web in multiple different ways. So I've showed you something that represents my aspirations for my home landscape, and hopefully the principles I've shared with you are something that can be used by, if in regenerative home landscapes, also with farmers can use these principles of soil health. I highly recommend Gabe Brown's book, Dirt to Soil, which is just a fabulous book. Whether you're a farmer or not, knowing what makes healthy soil and how to make healthy soil is extremely important and helpful. So that's all I have, and thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful day.